Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this What If story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐻17 on Wattpad. Now let's start. Izuku Midoriya sat on the edge of a towering building, the bitter wind swirling around him. His breath turned to clouds in the cold air, and his teeth chattered as he clutched tightly to one of the safety rail bars. He looked down at the ground below, feeling a profound sadness and fear wash over him. He questioned why he had been born without a quirk, feeling lost and purposeless. He had never believed in a higher power, thinking that if a deity existed, they would not allow him to suffer this way. Instead, he found himself longing for an escape from the pain, a darkness that promised relief. A voice in his head urged him to take a leap off the roof, suggesting that perhaps he could find a quirk in another life. After years of struggling with these thoughts, he felt an overwhelming urge to give in. In a moment of impulsiveness, he let go of the railing and pushed himself forward, feeling the rush of air as he fell. As he plummeted, dread filled his body, and he closed his eyes, thinking of saying goodbye. Suddenly, he felt something wrap around his ankle, jerking him to a halt. Pain shot through him as he landed awkwardly, and he sat down with a sigh, frustrated by his injury. He barely noticed the figure approaching until they squatted beside him. Normally, he would have been thrilled to see a pro hero, but today felt different. The hero introduced himself as 𝐼𝐻𝐻, and Izuku felt a mix of awe and anxiety. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 asked for his name, and Izuku looked down, guilt washing over him as he realized the gravity of the situation. He whispered his name, feeling the weight of his struggles. 𝐼𝐻𝐻, noticing Izuku's discomfort, asked him why he felt the need to harm himself. The bluntness of the question made Izuku flinch, and he instinctively began to scratch at his arm, overwhelmed by the urge to escape his feelings. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 noticed the action and gently rolled up Izuku's sleeve, revealing the marks on his arm. He asked if there were any serious wounds that needed attention. Izuku tensed, but 𝐼𝐻𝐻 reassured him that he would carry him to the hospital. After a moment of hesitation, Izuku nodded, and soon he found himself wrapped in 𝐼𝐻𝐻's scarf as the hero soared across the rooftops toward the hospital. Upon arrival, Izuku was still wrapped in the hero's cloth as he heard someone speaking quickly. A cheerful girl greeted 𝐼𝐻𝐻, and he walked over to a nearby bed. As he unwrapped the cloth, Izuku dropped onto the bed with a soft thud. The girl smiled at him and asked who he was. Izuku felt a rush of thoughts, his need for relief overwhelming him. He spoke up, his voice shaky, pleading for them to let him go, feeling like a burden. He wished they wouldn't waste their time on someone like him. The girl's smile faltered as she explained to 𝐼𝐻𝐻 that she had saved a boy named Izuku from a tragic fall. He had come down from a height of 9 feet before she caught him, and it seemed he was struggling with self-harm and needed medical attention. While she wasn't sure about his legs, both of his arms required bandaging. The hero nearby settled into a chair, wrapping himself in a yellow cocoon-like sleeping bag. He gradually slid off the chair and onto the ground with a soft thump, and soon light snores filled the air. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 approached Izuku cautiously, gently taking his hand and sleeve, asking for permission to help. He hesitantly nodded, and she carefully rolled up his sleeves, applying cream and bandages to both arms and then to his legs. Each action brought him a mix of relief and discomfort. Once she finished, she inquired about a family member's phone number, and he provided it. Suddenly, choked sobs and hurried footsteps echoed in the hallway. His mother burst into the room, rushing to Izuku and enveloping him in a tight hug. She expressed her concern, asking why he hadn't shared his feelings with her. As dried tears were replaced by new ones, Izuku's voice trembled with regret, feeling unworthy of her love. He believed he was a failure, useless without a quirk. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 reassured him, emphasizing that she loved him regardless of his abilities. She was visibly shaken by sadness but remained steadfast in her affection. Izuku wrapped his arms around her, feeling a surge of love and hope fill his heart. The following weeks for Izuku were filled with therapy sessions and struggles against self-harm. His mother decided to consult his therapist, Dr. 𝐒𝐬𝐲𝐬, on how to help him. Less than a week later, all sharp objects in their home were secured, and his writing tools were locked away, accessible only with his mother's key. Izuku felt overwhelmed by the drastic measures his mother took to protect him. One day, as she prepared to leave to meet a friend, she reminded him to call Dr. 𝐒𝐬𝐲𝐬 if he felt any urges. After she left, he rushed to her room and retrieved the lockbox from under the bed. His desperation consumed him as he opened it, but it was empty. Frustration boiled within him. He felt an intense need to harm himself, believing it was the only way to cope. He began scratching at his skin and then pounded his fists against the floor, creating loud thumps that echoed through the apartment. In a moment of overwhelming rage, his fists glowed green, and he struck the lockbox, causing it to shatter. The sight of the knives inside taunted him. In a daze, he realized his pinky had been injured on a sharp edge, leaving a painful reminder. His vision blurred, and he collapsed to the ground, closing his eyes in despair. Meanwhile, the underground hero felt compelled to check on the boy after finishing his work. The image of Izuku's scars lingered in his mind. As he approached the apartment complex, he sensed something was wrong. He hurried up the stairs, hearing a loud thump, and instinctively dashed to the roof, leaping onto the balcony and slipping through an open window. Inside, Izuku sat in turmoil, feeling as though he was on the brink of a panic attack. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, grappling with the chaos of his situation. One moment, he felt a surge of power, and the next, he faced the consequences of his actions. Overwhelmed, he longed for solitude, wishing for an escape from the pain that consumed him. Izuku felt a breeze on his cheek, his senses snapping him back to the dark reality he was in. The greenette found himself on a ledge, a disturbingly familiar one, the same building he had once climbed in despair. Unlike the cold environment of a few weeks ago, today the sun beamed brightly, and the streets were bustling with large crowds. The enticing smells of food wafted through the air, so rich that Izuku could almost taste them. He felt himself drawn to the aromas, drifting toward the food, when a voice broke through his trance. A passerby exclaimed in shock, and Izuku suddenly realized he was floating in the air. Panic surged through him as he screamed for help, and the crowd around him reacted with alarm, phones ringing as people called for assistance. Then he fell. Izuku screamed as he plummeted toward the street below, a terrifying echo of his earlier experience. The sounds of his own scream mixed with those of the crowd. He closed his eyes, bracing for impact, but when he hit the ground, he was met with an unexpected softness. He opened his eyes to see a tall girl with a large black ponytail standing over him, an aura of strength surrounding her. He quickly realized he had landed on a large white air mattress, and people were gathering around him. Confused murmurs filled the air, and Izuku felt his anxiety rising. He took a shaky breath and managed to express his gratitude, his voice barely above a whisper. He felt weak and reminded himself to be stronger. The girl introduced herself as Momo Yaoyorozu and asked him to explain what had happened. Izuku hesitated, his gaze wandering up her figure before he focused on her eyes, answering her question with uncertainty. She seemed skeptical, and he felt the urge to scratch his arm, a nervous habit. Realizing he had lingered too long, Izuku stood up, missing the comfort of the mattress already. He knew he needed to leave before the police arrived. Without warning, he bolted, hearing Momo call out for him to stop as people tried to block his path. He dodged them, but one person grabbed his arm, causing him to wince in pain. He pulled free, ripping his sleeve in the process, and sprinted away like prey fleeing from a predator. Turning a corner into a rundown alley, he stopped abruptly, his eyes widening in horror. A girl with pink hair and horns was struggling against two men. One of them was holding her mouth shut while the other was invading her space. Izuku felt a surge of panic and anger as he witnessed the scene unfold. The girl was fighting back, but the man's grip was too strong. Izuku's heart raced as he realized he couldn't just stand by. Something ignited within him, pure rage. His fists began to glow green, energy crackling around him as he stepped into the alley, ready to confront the danger before him. Both men turned to him, startled, but their faces quickly filled with anger. Izuku stood his ground, unwavering. One of the men removed his hand from a compromising position, the tension in the air palpable. He took a moment to grope the young girl's figure before standing up. Izuku's hardened glare shifted to the other man, who suddenly produced a pistol. With determination, Izuku took a step forward, then another, and in a flash of green light, his fist connected with the man's face. The force of the punch sent the man staggering back, his head snapping from the impact. He dropped the gun, a small spray of saliva escaping his mouth as he was propelled upwards onto the fire escape above. The metal rattled as his head struck it, and he fell back down in a heap, twitching on the ground. The other man gasped audibly, trembling in fear, his eyes wide. He pleaded for mercy, stammering that he hadn't meant to cause any trouble. Without hesitation, Izuku launched himself at the man, his glowing fist striking the would-be assailant's stomach, causing him to double over. The man stumbled but soon collapsed to the ground, unconscious like his companion, though both were still alive. Izuku felt his strength waning and turned his attention to the pink-haired girl. He rushed over and gently shook her, her eyes fluttering open as she screamed in shock. Instinctively, Izuku covered her mouth to stifle her cry. She looked at him in terror, and he quickly reassured her that he meant no harm. The girl nodded, and he let his hand fall. Overwhelmed with emotion, she began to sob, curling into a ball on the ground. Izuku picked up her discarded clothes from beside the trash can and handed them to her before stepping back to give her space. After a brief moment of waiting, he turned to see her tear-stained face transform into one of relief and gratitude. Now dressed in black shorts and a pink t-shirt with "Pinky" emblazoned across the front, she wrapped her arms around him tightly, thanking him for saving her dignity. Izuku returned the hug with a smile, but reminded her that they still had a situation to address. The girl released him, a look of concern on her face. She followed his gaze and shuddered at the sight of the men who had threatened her. Izuku suggested she call the police to ensure she was all right while he would take the men to a nearby station. Though he appeared calm, his mind was racing with thoughts of retribution. The girl retrieved her phone, relieved that it was undamaged, and began to call for help. As Izuku dragged the thugs away, one of them called out, asking how he could repay Izuku for his actions. Izuku simply requested her name. The girl, bashful and blushing, introduced herself as Mina Ishido. He nodded in acknowledgement and left the alley, walking for a few minutes as both men began to stir in his grasp. He soon came across a dumpster, an isolated area perfect for what he had in mind. Izuku's eyes glinted with a predatory intensity. He felt a rush of excitement at the thought of what was to come. That day, a new chapter began for him. Izuku had always felt like the last person who could be a hero. Lacking a quirk and facing constant bullying from his classmates, his hope dwindled daily. The only source of inspiration was his favorite pro-hero, Nana Shimura, also known as All Might. However, her words cut deeper than any blade. She told him he could never be a hero without a quirk, that he would only be a burden to others. Those words shattered his spirit, and the taunts from his so-called friends pushed him to the brink. In a moment of despair, he contemplated ending it all, only to be saved by a hero at the last moment. Izuku reflected on that day, realizing how it had changed him forever. But now he had a quirk, and he was determined to make the most of it. For the past month, Izuku had been at Takoba Municipal Beach Park, a place that had been a dumping ground for as long as he could remember. Piles of trash, stacks of garbage bags, metal scraps, and even old washing machines littered the area. However, that was about to change. Izuku had cleared up the confusion with the police and his parents by claiming he got scared and ran off. To his surprise, they believed him, even though he faced some reprimands for his actions. Izuku was almost finished with his cleanup effort. Despite his complicated feelings towards heroes, he still aspired to be one, not just any hero, but an honest pro-hero who stood up for Japan and put others' lives before his own, including those who were quirkless. The beach was where he chose to start. As he was hauling a washing machine toward the towering pile of garbage, hoping that once the mess was organized, people would finally dispose of it properly, he suddenly heard a loud thump. Torrents of sand cascaded over him, covering his hair and, much to his annoyance, slipping inside his shirt. He set down the washing machine and shook off the sand, which poured out from his shirt and his bright green hair. Turning to see what had caused the disturbance, he was met with shock and confusion. Nana Shimura stood before him, less than 5 feet away, a small crater where she had landed. She wore a toothy grin, hands on her hips, and Izuku couldn't help but squeak in disbelief. Nana's presence stirred conflicting emotions within him. He tensed up, and his shock quickly morphed into confusion, which then turned into anger. Sensing the shift in his demeanor, Nana's smile faltered as she brushed some hair from her eye. She began to speak, but Izuku cut her off, his face filled with resentment. He firmly declared that he wanted nothing to do with the hero who had seemingly crushed his dreams. Nana was taken aback by his sudden hostility, her expression shifting to one of confusion. Before she could respond, Izuku dashed away, sand flying in every direction, and in an instant, Nana was in pursuit. She called out for him to wait, but he was fast. Sand splashed onto her face, momentarily blinding her, and she growled in frustration. After clearing her vision, she powered up One for All and quickly caught up to him. Timing her move perfectly, she leaped forward, wrapping her arm around his waist. Izuku gasped as he grabbed onto a lamp post to halt their momentum, slightly bending it in the process. With a firm grip on his arm, she spun him around. Their eyes met, his bright green ones clashed with her gray ones. For a fleeting moment, she thought he looked kind of cute, but that thought vanished as she noticed the overwhelming hatred radiating from his expression. Confusion washed over her. She couldn't understand why he was so angry. All she had wanted was to congratulate him for his heroic efforts. As she pondered her next move, she noticed tears welling in his eyes. He accused her of telling him he couldn't be a hero, and her heart sank as realization hit her. After a long silence, she asked for his name, but he retorted that it was none of her business. Regret filled her. She needed to make amends. She explained that she had been having a rough morning that day and asked if he could forgive her. His expression remained unyielding, and she could only guess at his feelings, as his hair obscured much of his face. When he firmly stated, "No," her heart dropped. She had never expected such a response. Had she hurt him that badly? She felt a wave of remorse wash over her. The kid lashed out in fury, his hands clenched and his body shuddering. She powered up her quirk, ready for the situation to escalate. The boy's words struck deep, expressing his pain and despair. She felt a wave of shame wash over her as the reality of his feelings sank in. Her own tears began to form in her eyes, reflecting her regret. She thought to herself how she had failed him, feeling unworthy of the title of hero. Izuku was consumed by rage, his hands trembling as he realized he was crying. He tried to wipe away his tears, but it was a futile effort. His gaze fell to his red boots, where some of his tears landed. When he looked up, he was shocked to see Nana Shimura crying, her body trembling. Confusion and insecurity flooded him, and he felt his own body shake as he stood under the flickering street lamp in the darkness of night. He questioned why she, of all people, would be crying. His temper flared as he demanded to know what she had to be upset about. Without warning, she removed her hands from his shoulders and pulled him into an embrace, pressing him against her. For a brief moment he was startled out of his thoughts, but he quickly regained his composure and pushed away from her grip, stumbling back and looking down, tears still streaming down his cheeks. However, he felt calmer than before. With a shaky voice, he expressed his struggle to forgive her, feeling as though his heart had grown too small for such an act. He apologized for disappointing her and walked away into the darkness of 𝐒𝐮𝐴 City, leaving the pro-hero trembling in shame. Inko was cleaning the kitchen counter, her worry for Izuku growing as he had been gone too long without a word. She thought of him, wondering where he was. Setting down the wet towel, she reached for her phone, hoping for a response to her messages, but it was in vain. The thought of her son being in danger was unbearable. Just then, Izuku appeared through the door, and she jumped up in surprise, her tears flowing as she rushed to hug him tightly, soaking his shoulder with her emotions. She asked him where he had been, feeling her heart ache at the sight of him. Looking up at her son, she noticed he was crying. Concern filled her as she asked what was wrong. He admitted to having a difficult interaction and expressed the need for some time alone. Reluctantly, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 let him go, watching with sadness as he walked into his room, leaving her with her thoughts. The next day, Izuku was back at the beach, clearing away debris and heavy items, creating a large pile of trash. He had grown stronger, able to lift things that once seemed impossible. As he worked, he noticed the attention he was receiving from onlookers, particularly women, who admired his physique. This attention made him anxious, as he was used to being bullied or insulted. Suddenly, he felt a tap on his shoulder and jumped in surprise. Turning around, he met bright yellow eyes that belonged to Mina. She excitedly announced her presence and pointed him out to Momo, who was nearby. Mina's enthusiasm caught him off guard, and he felt a rush of embarrassment as he tried to look away, his cheeks flushing. He recognized Momo, the girl he had met a month ago, and their eyes met as her ponytail swayed in the breeze. Izuku stood in the sand, his expression revealing that he felt caught. As the black-haired girl approached him, he felt a mix of anxiety and uncertainty. Her face was a blend of anger and confusion, and when they were just a foot apart, she raised her left hand. In an instant, Izuku found himself on the ground, curled up and whimpering, pleading for her not to hurt him. Both Mina and Momo were taken aback, unsure of how to react. Momo was the first to recover from her shock. She apologized profusely, explaining that she wanted to thank him for his bravery. If he hadn't run away, her friend would have been in serious danger. She bowed deeply in gratitude, her forehead nearly touching the sand. Izuku looked up at her with teary eyes, asking if she was really not going to hurt him. Momo, surprised, assured him that she would never harm the one who had saved her friend. She extended her hand, and just as she thought he wouldn't take it, he firmly grasped her hand and pulled himself up. After brushing off the sand from his clothes, Izuku was suddenly enveloped in a warm hug, which left him blushing. Momo thanked him again, and when she released him, he stuttered that it was no problem. Remembering something, she asked for his name. Shyly, he introduced himself as Izuku Midoriya. Both girls leaned in closer, suggesting they go out somewhere as a thank you. Before he could protest, they had already dragged him along, leaving him to exclaim for them to wait. They arrived at a place called the Cat Cafe, where the three of them settled into red leather seats. Momo and Mina sat together, while Izuku took a seat across from them. Cats curled up in their laps, purring contentedly. Momo noticed Mina's pout and teased her about not getting a cat, which only deepened Mina's frown. Momo chuckled at her cute reaction. Then Mina turned to Izuku, questioning why he wore long breathes and short sleeves in the heat. Momo added her curiosity about his earlier reaction, wondering why he seemed so fearful. Izuku froze, his thoughts racing. The girls noticed his discomfort, and Momo began to apologize, but Izuku quickly reassured them that it was fine since they were friends. Their smiles brightened at his words, but then turned to concern when he lifted his arms to reveal tightly packed bandages. Mina looked confused, but Momo seemed to understand what was coming next. Izuku began to peel away the bandages, and Mina gasped, startling some of the cats. Once he revealed his scars, he explained that he had started doing this to himself about a month ago, just weeks before meeting them. As he recounted his past and his admiration for heroes, he left out the darker details, thinking that they didn't need to know everything just yet. Feeling vulnerable, Izuku expressed his uncertainty about their friendship, fearing they might leave him after learning about his struggles. Tears welled in his eyes as he apologized for bothering them. Momo quickly reassured him that they wanted to be his friends, and both girls confirmed their support. After enjoying their time together and reluctantly letting the cats go, they exchanged numbers and walked home together, solidifying their newfound bond. Just one last week until the 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐦𝐸 entrance exam, and Izuku was happier than he had been in a long time. The fact that both of his friends were also going to 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐸 filled him with even more joy. When he got home, he quickly noticed that his mother wasn't there. He felt a twinge of disappointment, wishing to share his good news with her. However, for once, he felt inspired to do something he hadn't done in a long time. Izuku changed into comfortable clothes and took a moment to gather his thoughts. He felt a surge of excitement as he prepared for the upcoming exam, imagining the possibilities that awaited him. As the day of the exam approached, Izuku's nerves began to surface. His body trembled with anticipation, and his mind raced with thoughts of what was to come. He was grateful for the calming effect of a few moments of solitude before the exam. As he made his way to the exam area, he stumbled, feeling a moment of panic. Just as he thought he might fall, he felt a sudden lift, finding himself back on his feet. He turned to see a bashful brunette who had used her quirk to save him. She apologized for her actions, explaining that it would be bad luck to fall on such an important day, and then she skipped away, leaving Izuku bewildered. After the written exam, the combat portion began. Izuku felt a rush of adrenaline as he activated his quirk and dashed into the simulated city. Each step he took cracked the ground beneath him. His first opponent was a massive mech armed with machine guns. Izuku deftly dodged the bullets and teleported behind the machine, delivering a powerful punch that sent it crashing down in a shower of sparks. He carved a path through the chaos, leaving behind charred remains of robots. Standing atop a small pile of debris, he raised his fist in triumph, feeling a surge of energy coursing through him. Just then, the zero-pointer appeared. After saving the brunette, who expressed her gratitude repeatedly, Izuku carried her to the nurse's office. She was a flustered mess, amazed that he had defeated the zero-pointer in one punch. He gently set her down on a small bed, relieved that she hadn't succumbed to the effects of her quirk. As he prepared to leave, the girl grasped his arm, making him turn back. She looked away shyly, her blush evident. She expressed her hope that if she got into you, she would be happy to have him in her class so they could get to know each other better. Izuku smiled brightly, feeling warmth spread through him, and ruffled her hair before stepping out, leaving her with a hopeful thought. Izuku was just about to exit the building, his mind filled with happy thoughts. His cheerful demeanor caught the attention of those around him, bringing smiles and blushes to their faces. Just as he was about to text his friends, a loud voice echoed through the intercom, calling for him to report to the office in room. Anxiety crept in as he wondered what they wanted to discuss. Entering the large office marked with bold letters, he was greeted by 4 figures, 3 of whom he recognized: Present Mike, Principal Nizu, and another familiar face. Izuku felt a mix of excitement and apprehension as he prepared to hear what they had to say. Izuku's gaze was fixed on the lady in the room. He growled, questioning her presence. Nizu offered a knowing look in Izuku's direction, explaining that Nana wanted to apologize for her past actions and hoped to prevent any conflict in the classroom that could create stress or tension among his future classmates. Izuku was taken aback, realizing that she was working at 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐥𝐬. All the teachers nodded respectfully in acknowledgement. His eyes narrowed as he expressed his disdain, stating that an apology wouldn't undo the harm she had caused him. The morning light filtering through the blinds cast a shadow over Izuku's face, making him appear darker than he truly was. Nana looked down in shame, pleading for a chance to explain herself. Izuku's expression turned fierce, his dark aura filling the room, causing the heroes to tremble in fear. He warned her to remain silent, expressing his frustration with the harsh realities heroes face, urging her to accept that she couldn't save him. With that, he began to leave the room. A man in a trench coat and fedora spoke up, hinting at knowledge of Izuku's past. Izuku turned back, his instincts on high alert, demanding to know the man's name. The man introduced himself as Detective Naomasa Tsukachi, but Izuku shot him a glare filled with contempt before exiting. Izuku sulked on his way home, feeling even worse despite texting his friends. Dark thoughts plagued him, questioning whether they would abandon him if they discovered his struggles. He tried to shake off these thoughts, but they lingered. Izuku had found 2 ways to cope with his turmoil: self-harm or smoking. A while back, he had ventured to a local drag store, adopting a somewhat adult-like persona to buy cigarettes. The manager quickly realized his age but explained how stores often profit from underage customers. In no time, Izuku had his first pack, and after gaining the confidence to smoke, it became his second method of self-harm, affecting him internally rather than externally. He had lost track of how many cigarettes he had consumed, not caring much as he believed his body could handle the effects, just as it had healed after a severe injury. The day Nana attempted to apologize left him in a sour mood, prompting him to act out. He randomly broke a window at a house and took the glass shards, a decision he later regretted. Once in his room, he engaged in a self-harming episode. If he had still been quirkless, the situation could have been dire, but his healing abilities allowed him to recover quickly, even regrowing a finger. Despite the healing, the scars from his past remained, and Izuku found some comfort in them, viewing them as part of his identity. As he walked, his longing for release grew stronger, and he succumbed to his cravings. In a flash, he was in his room, rummaging through his backpack for his cigarettes and lighter. In an alleyway, Izuku smoked without a care in the world. The nicotine calmed his racing thoughts, allowing the more stable version of himself to regain control. He took a puff, feeling a sense of acceptance wash over him, thinking that he could get used to this. All for One was known by many as the number one villain, a title that paralleled the existence of a number one hero. However, not everyone was aware of his identity, and many believed him to be dead. Years ago, the previous number one hero, All Might, had a legendary battle in the heart of Hosu City. While the heroes and media attributed the destruction to an explosive quirk, only a few knew the truth of that fateful encounter. Among them was Izuku Midoriya, whose mother had witnessed the event. To this day, remnants of the destruction remained, preserved as a landmark to remind villains that heroes would always triumph. As a child, Izuku visited the site with his mother, his admiration for All Might igniting his inner fanboy. However, after All Might's retirement a year ago, the mantle of number one hero passed to Nana Shimura. Her debut on June 6 was marred by an embarrassing incident that quickly faded from public discussion. Izuku remained unaware of what had transpired that day as Nana skillfully avoided questions about it. These thoughts and memories were being observed by All for One, who was very much alive. As he took a drag from his cigarette, he injected Izuku with his quirk, delving into the boy's memories. His analysis had long suggested that Izuku would be the perfect successor, and after years of searching, he had finally found him. As Izuku took another puff of his cigarette, the villain injected him with a second serum, his own quirk. The fate of Izuku now rested in his hands, as the quirk that had held all of Izuku's powers together began to unravel. As the villain vanished into mist, he smiled sadistically, proclaiming that Izuku would indeed make a perfect successor. Izuku lay on his bed, arms dangling off the edge, staring at his phone. The screen illuminated his face in the dimness of his room, which he had transformed into a personal cocoon with thick, dark curtains blocking out most of the light. To him, it felt like night, as he often lost track of time in his secluded space. The remnants of his 𝐼𝐻 posters were faint rectangular shapes on the blue walls, a reminder of the day his dreams were crushed. In a fit of rage, he had torn down all the posters, leaving only a large collection of action figures, which he decided to sell online to help support his struggling mother. His phone beeped, breaking his train of thought. He opened the messaging app. In the group chat titled, The Friendly Chat, Pinky reached out, expressing concern for Izuku's absence at the beach. Izuku replied, explaining that he was tired after the exam and planned to take the week off, confirming that the exam papers were due on Sunday. Pinky then asked if Izuku could join her for a fun outing to relieve her anxiety about the test results. Izuku readily agreed, saying he would check with Momo to see if she wanted to join. However, Pinky insisted it should just be the two of them, suggesting they meet at the beach at noon. Izuku's mind was swirling with thoughts, and his cheeks were a deep shade of red. He couldn't believe he had just asked someone out on a date. His mind felt like it had crashed. As noon approached, Izuku was frantic, searching for the perfect outfit. He rummaged through his drawer and finally found light blue jeans and a long-sleeve black shirt. That would do, he thought, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead from the stress of it all. Among his clothes, he stumbled upon a small stack of wrinkled shirts and breathes, his All Might and 𝐼𝐻𝐽 gear. He cringed inwardly, recalling how big of a fan he had been. Checking the time on his phone, Izuku's heart dropped when he saw it was 11. He let out a loud exclamation and bolted out of the house, relieved that his mother wasn't home. He shuddered at the thought of what would have happened if she had been there. The beach was 15 minutes away, and he was on edge. He powered up his quirk, his feet planted firmly on the ground, sparks dancing around him. In an instant, he was airborne. Mina was caught off guard as a sudden explosion of sand enveloped her. She waved her arms wildly, trying to block the sand from her face. When the chaos settled, she looked up in anger at her unexpected assailant. To her surprise, it was Izuku, her favorite boy. He seemed startled and began to apologize, bowing his head in the sand. Mina tried to interrupt him, but he continued to ramble, clearly flustered. She finally raised her voice to get his attention. Izuku was still confused, his wide green eyes making him look adorably lost. Mina chuckled at the sight. She reassured him that she wasn't mad and dusted off her stylish blouse and ripped jeans before fully focusing on him. The sight of him still looking bewildered made her blush. She quickly regained her composure and pointed out that he had sand in his hair. Izuku blushed and frantically tried to sweep it away, stuttering another apology. Mina laughed, hands on her hips, thinking about how much fun this was going to be. After walking Mina home, Izuku felt a rush of embarrassment as he realized what he had done. His mind was racing. He had just kissed a girl for the first time. A woman in business attire passed by and congratulated him, causing him to blush even more. She bore a striking resemblance to Momo. Lost in thought, he nearly got run over by 2 cars, both drivers yelling at him as they sped past. After what felt like an eternity, Izuku finally arrived home. His mother was cheerfully preparing dinner, the sounds of utensils clinking filling the air. The delicious smell of katsudon wafted into his nostrils, making his mouth water. When she noticed him enter, she smiled brightly. He greeted her, apologizing for being late and mentioning he had been hanging out with a friend. His mother raised an eyebrow, warning him about Bakugo and his bullying. Izuku looked at her in surprise, realizing she was aware of what had been happening. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was somehow unaware of the weight of her words. She expressed to Izuku that she had always known, but it took him a moment to process this revelation. Sensing a dark aura surrounding her son, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 looked at him with concern and tried to calm him down. Izuku's face twisted in frustration as he struggled to contain his emotions. He couldn't believe that his mother had known all along and had done nothing to help him. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, feeling the intensity of his anger, stepped back, dropping the pan she had been holding. She apologized, explaining that he wasn't supposed to find out. But Izuku's eyes glowed with a fierce intensity as he confronted her about the times he had come home hurt and in tears. He felt betrayed that she had acted as if she was unaware of his suffering, questioning whether she truly cared for him. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, feeling a surge of defiance, stepped forward, her voice rising in anger. She revealed that every time she looked at him, he reminded her of his father, who had hurt her when he was upset. Izuku's shock turned to rage, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 fell to the floor, trembling and raising her hands defensively. Izuku's anger boiled over as he declared that looking like his father did not mean he was like him. He expressed his disbelief that she had never helped him, questioning if it was because he was quirkless. The realization struck him hard. He had always felt like a burden, and now he understood why. Fueled by his emotions, Izuku unleashed his power, his body enveloped in darkness as he slammed his fist onto the ground, causing the earth to shatter around him. He looked at his mother, who was now filled with fear and shock. Ignoring her, he retreated to his room and locked the door. The fire alarm soon blared as the food in the kitchen burned. Izuku isolated himself, avoiding his mother's cries as he shut himself away. The pain he felt was a reflection of his inner turmoil, each cut on his body a reminder of his struggles. Though the wounds healed, he wished for an escape from his pain, but thoughts of his 2 best friends lingered in his mind. His mental stability was fragile, and he felt the weight of his struggles growing heavier. Each time he managed to piece himself back together, something would shatter him again, and he feared that one day he would no longer be able to mend himself. Eventually, his mother's cries faded, and he heard her retreat to her room just before midnight. The soft click of her door signaled a momentary peace, and sleep eventually came to Izuku. The next day, he woke up feeling somewhat rested. After taking a shower, he mustered the courage to leave his room, sighing as he did. He decided to check on his mother, still holding on to a semblance of love for her despite their tumultuous relationship. He found her in distress, her cries muffled into her pillow, surrounded by tissues and buckets that bore witness to her sorrow. Izuku lingered at the doorframe, acknowledging their strained bond by reminding her that, despite everything, she was still his mother. He left her room without another word. As he glanced at the mail, he noticed a letter from 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲. Even though he was confident he would be accepted, he felt compelled to check. It had been his dream since childhood, and despite the pain caused by heroes, friends, and family, he hoped that achieving this dream would bring him some peace after years of feeling marginalized. Time skipped to next day. Izuku was very happy he was going to 𝐒𝐮𝐬, but he also felt a bit wary since 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐼 would be there. He gave his mother a short hug and exchanged a few words before finally heading off to his dream school. This would either go well or poorly, but he hoped he would get to prove himself. A grin spread across his face as he thought about the excitement ahead. Izuku stood at the 𝐒𝐮𝐬 gate, his green hair flowing gracefully in the breeze. The high-tech walls glimmered in the sunlight, wrapping around the expansive campus. No doubt, this was the best hero school in Japan. He was so caught up in his thoughts that he didn't even notice Mina sneak up on him. When her pink arms wrapped around his stomach, he let out a small yelp in surprise. It took a moment for him to regain his composure. Mina nuzzled her nose against him and gave him a quick peck on the cheek, causing Izuku to blush deeply. They both walked into the building, keeping their distance to avoid raising any suspicions about their relationship. Mina had decided to be sensible about it after their brief chat that morning. Both Izuku and Mina watched in disbelief as the pro-heroine Midnight seemed to take an interest in Izuku. She struck suggestive poses, a playful grin on her face, getting so close that he could catch a whiff of her lavender-scented hair. She complimented his performance in the entrance exam and noted his impressive stamina. Izuku blushed even more when she playfully touched his chest, prompting Mina to quickly drag him away, both of them flustered. To their delight, they discovered they were in the same class, which only heightened their excitement. As they sat in their chairs, they chatted about various topics, eagerly waiting for the rest of the class to arrive. They had come early to enjoy some time together, and after their encounter with Midnight, they shared a sweet moment in the empty hallway, affirming their bond. Izuku remembered something he wanted to ask Mina. He hesitated before broaching the subject. He asked her about the incident when they first met, curious about why she hadn't used her quirk during that time. Mina looked down at her desk, admitting that she had been too scared to think clearly. Since that day, she had been mentally training herself to be ready for anything. Izuku nodded in understanding, then gazed out the window at the lush green forest nearby before remembering something else. He turned back to Mina and mentioned that he had a new therapist. Mina's expression shifted as she urged him to continue. He explained that her name was 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐼 and that she bore a striking resemblance to Midnight, with the only differences being her unique quirk and her background as a former Black Ops member. Mina's face darkened as she warned him not to get seduced by her. Izuku's face turned red as he protested vehemently, causing Mina to chuckle at his reaction. Just then, the door opened, revealing Momo, who greeted them with a mix of happiness and sadness. Both Mina and Izuku noticed her demeanor and asked if she was okay. Momo looked down, seemingly ashamed, and took a deep breath before adjusting her tie. She asked if it would be all right for her to join their relationship. Izuku's mind went blank. Izuku woke up on the cold tiles of the floor, trying to piece together what had happened. He quickly shot up, his gaze landing on the two young women before him. His heart raced at the sight of Momo, but he felt a pang of sadness at her downcast expression. Momo looked like she was on the verge of tears. Izuku stood up and looked directly into her appealing dark eyes, then glanced at Mina, who was hugging Momo from behind. She gave him a silent nod, and with determination, he took action. He held Momo's hands and pulled her into a gentle kiss, surprising her. As she melted into the kiss, both of them explored the moment, their connection deepening as they shared a tender moment together. They both breathed and Momo immediately panicked, her face turning to Mina. Momo expressed her concern about Mina's relationship with Izuku, but Mina placed a finger on Momo's lips and suggested they could share him. Momo's eyes widened in surprise as Mina began to blush. Mina explained that she was okay with Izuku being with other girls as long as he truly loved them. Izuku's eyes widened in disbelief at Mina's words. Mina then gave Momo a quick peck on the lips and mentioned that she was open to loving Momo too if Izuku had feelings for her. Momo felt overwhelmed by the situation. As the others started walking into the classroom, Momo woke up just in time. Izuku and Mina both gave her a sly wink. As they filtered in, Izuku noticed a classmate with glasses who immediately approached him and bowed. Mina stifled a laugh, recalling when Izuku had apologized to her. The boy expressed his regret for underestimating Izuku's heroics and admitted he felt shame after witnessing Izuku save someone while everyone else ran away. Izuku, having mastered the art of masking his emotions, put on a bright smile and reassured the boy that it was okay to have flaws. The room seemed to light up with his positivity, causing a few girls to blush. Izuku greeted his new classmates, but his smile faltered when Bakugo entered the room. Bakugo's attention quickly turned to Izuku, demanding to know how he had gotten in. Before Bakugo could finish, a familiar voice interrupted, introducing themselves as the homeroom teacher. The teacher instructed everyone to change into their hero clothes and warned that being late would result in expulsion, giving them only 15 minutes. The class quieted as they quickly filtered through the door to the changing rooms. Izuku opened the door to a luxurious room filled with large green plants in dark granite vases and waterfalls cascading down the back wall. His eyes sparkled with wonder. As he took in the surroundings, he noticed a slim girl with long black hair and amber eyes looking directly at him with a small smirk. She wore a black turtleneck, and her desk was cluttered with fidget toys and a computer. She gestured to the couch on the right side of the room, inviting him to sit. Once seated, she acknowledged that she had heard a lot about him and noticed he seemed anxious. She offered him a fidget spinner, its copper surface glinting in the light, and asked if he knew why he was there. Izuku shifted nervously, his gaze dropping to the marble floor as he revealed that he had once attempted to take his own life. She listened intently, having rolled her chair closer to see him better. A tense silence filled the room, a bead of sweat rolling down his forehead. She gently encouraged him to share his experiences, particularly about being quirkless. Izuku nodded slowly, recounting how he had been told at a young age that he lacked a quirk, which crushed his dreams of becoming a hero like All Might. He spoke of his loving parents and how his father's reaction to his quirklessness had deeply affected him. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he struggled to continue. She reassured him that it was okay to express his feelings and asked him to share more about his childhood. Izuku clenched his fists as he recalled a friend who had bullied him upon learning he was quirkless. He described the humiliation he faced, noting that even the teachers and principal had turned a blind eye to his suffering. Despite the pain, he had held on to hope of becoming a hero, but the relentless bullying had left him feeling worthless. She moved to sit on the couch, maintaining a respectful distance and encouraging him to share what had led to his darkest moment. She felt a mix of shame and anger at the injustices he had faced and was determined to help him in any way she could. Izuku's eyes turned a dull gray, surprising the girl. He recalled a painful memory when his bully had told him that to gain a quirk, he should take a swan dive off the roof and hope for a quirk in the next life. Despite the harsh words, he still held on to hope. However, everything changed when he was captured by the sludge villain on his way home, only to be rescued by the renowned All Might. He paused for a moment, reflecting on the impact of that day. She had been the last straw for him. He had worked tirelessly to reach his goals, only to have her tell him to stop being foolish and naive, insisting that he could never be a hero without a quirk and would only be a burden to others. The therapist sensed his deep emotions through her quirk. She had never encountered someone so seemingly devoid of feeling. The following week, overwhelmed by despair, he attempted to end his life, joking to himself that next time he would choose a place without heroes nearby. The therapist leaned forward, offering him a comforting gaze, assuring him that she was there for him. Izuku and his classmates exited the changing rooms, where the purple-haired boy was ogling Ichiko's skin-tight hero outfit. Izuku, not wanting to entertain such thoughts, swiftly delivered a light chop to Mina's neck, watching as the boy sulked away like a wounded puppy. His eyes nearly bulged when Momo emerged in her striking red hero outfit, which left little to the imagination. Once again, he had to chop Mineta on the neck multiple times as the other girls joined them. Momo sighed, explaining that while her original design would have revealed more, the designers had covered it up, limiting her ability to create larger objects since her quirk required visible skin to function effectively. Izuku nodded, realizing that Momo's leniency was all in service of her quirk. Gal might observed the Class 1A students, particularly Izuku, feeling a mix of admiration and shame. She hid behind a corner, watching him throw a baseball with such force that it cracked the ground and created a shockwave, causing her cape to flutter in the wind. He then outpaced a furious blonde boy in a sprint, moving so quickly it appeared as if he had teleported. Izuku's focused expression filled her with sadness as she thought about how he would have made the perfect successor, but she felt too young to retire. Confused, she recalled Izuku saying she had destroyed his dream and wondered why he was still pursuing heroism. She admired his seemingly endless stamina as the class finished their training and changed back into their uniforms. Strangely, both the pink-haired girl and the girl with a ponytail were closely following him, seemingly oblivious to the fact that Izuku was blushing furiously. She questioned whether this could be considered stalking but shrugged it off and moved on. As Izuku walked through the hallway, Ichiko skipped alongside him, with Momo and Mina right behind. They praised him for his performance, but he noticed his girlfriends flinching at the mention of Bakugo being in their school. They had recognized him immediately and expressed a longing to tell Nizu to expel him, but to their surprise, Izuku defended Bakugo, allowing him to stay for now. He questioned why they called him Deku, reminding them that his name was Izuku. The brunette explained that Deku meant, "You can do it," playfully making finger guns. Just as he was about to respond, his phone vibrated in his pocket, reminding him of his therapist appointment. He sighed, apologizing that he had to see a teacher and would catch up with them later. Ichiko looked down, disappointed, but he ruffled her hair affectionately, making her blush before heading off, hoping that this therapist would be helpful. Later, Izuku found himself standing over two men who struggled to escape his grasp. Their legs had been incapacitated, leaving them unable to flee. One man gasped for air, his eyes wide with fear, before his body went limp, his expression void of emotion. Izuku stood over the second man, his bright green eyes focused, waiting until he too succumbed. With a sense of grim satisfaction, he signed the ground with BLD, spelling out, "The Green Reaper." A smile of pride crossed his face as he teleported away from the scene, returning home to clean up, his mother none the wiser. These men were notorious criminals, and Izuku had tracked them down, determined to bring justice to their actions. Izuku was packing his things as the dorms were completed. He felt a mix of sadness about leaving his mother and frustration that he needed to blow off some steam. Today was just about moving into the dorms. Izuku happily helped Mina and Momo, who both expressed their appreciation with playful gestures. They shared a light-hearted moment until Momo nearly lost her balance, causing Mina to laugh and Momo to blush in embarrassment. Mina noticed something and looked at Izuku with a curious expression. Izuku pointed out that Mina had a similar blush on her face, and soon all three were laughing together on Momo's luxurious queen-sized bed. Momo, in a playful mood, conjured up new breathes and underwear for both of them. Feeling flustered, Izuku decided to excuse himself, leaving the girls giggling behind him. As he walked down the hallway, a familiar voice called out to him. Izuku flinched, memories of past bullying flooding his mind. Bakugo approached him aggressively, slamming Izuku against the wall. He unleashed a torrent of harsh words, questioning how someone like Izuku could possess a quirk. Bakugo's anger escalated, and he threatened Izuku, leaving him shaken and vulnerable. After Bakugo walked away, Izuku got up from the floor and headed toward the bathroom, only to encounter Pitohui on the stairs. Her smile quickly turned to concern as she approached him. Izuku struggled to find his voice, tears welling up in his eyes. He attempted to brush her off, claiming he had simply fallen. However, Pitohui stood her ground, demanding to know why he had spit on his face. In a moment of panic, Izuku fled to his room, with Pitohui following closely behind. Once inside, he tried to close the door, but she easily pushed it open. Izuku curled up in a ball, scratching at his arms anxiously. 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬, sensing his distress, reassured him that she was there for him. She approached slowly, explaining her intentions to comfort him. Izuku, trembling and lost in his thoughts, eventually nodded in response to her gentle words. She wiped away the spit on his face and began rubbing his back in soothing circles. Gradually, his crying subsided and he drifted off to sleep. When Izuku awoke, he found himself resting on something soft. Looking up, he saw 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬 smiling down at him, realizing he was on her thigh. Embarrassed, he apologized and looked away. She reassured him, gently stroking his hair. When she mentioned 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬, Izuku's heart raced, and he pleaded with her not to tell anyone. 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬's expression turned serious as she confirmed that 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬 was indeed the one who had bullied him. She explained that his girlfriends had come to her with their concerns, and if 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬's behavior continued, he would face serious consequences. Izuku felt a wave of panic wash over him as dark thoughts invaded his mind. 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬, sensing his turmoil, placed 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐻𝐬 on his wrists for his own safety. She reminded him that many people cared about him and wanted to help. Izuku's thoughts spiraled as he struggled against the restraints, but 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬's calming presence began to ground him. She shared her own past, revealing that she had once been in the army and had witnessed unimaginable horrors. Her experiences had left deep scars, and she understood the weight of guilt and despair. She recounted a tragic incident that haunted her, emphasizing the importance of life and the support of those who cared for him. As she spoke, Izuku began to understand that he was not alone in his struggles. He listened intently, realizing that even in darkness, there was hope and the possibility of healing. Izuku felt a gentle hand slide his puffy hair. He nodded in response, not saying a word as a long silence passed between them. She assured him that she wouldn't judge, expressing that they both needed help. Her bright smile lit up the room as she added that it would be a waste for the world to lose someone as appealing as her. She blushed and looked away, a small smile gracing her face. Izuku felt a rush of panic, stammering an apology, but was cut off when she placed a small kiss on his cheek, thanking him for the moment. Izuku was unfazed as his competitive side began to emerge. 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬, fueled by his determination, shouted fiercely as he powered up his quirk. His fist was aimed directly at Izuku's stomach, and everything seemed to slow down. Izuku caught 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬's still-burning fist without flinching at the heat, and in one fluid motion, he flung 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬 into a stone pillar. The sight of 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬 made Izuku want to laugh, but he held back, wanting to maintain his gentle persona. 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬, undeterred, picked up a discarded metal pole from the ground, heating one end to cut it in half, creating a makeshift bat. With a fierce battle cry, he lunged at Izuku. Despite Nana's attempts to intervene, Izuku allowed 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬 to strike first, letting out a faint scream as the bar made contact with his shoulder. In an unexpected twist, Izuku seized the heated end of the rod from 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬's grip, leaving 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬 wide-eyed in shock. With a swift swing, he struck 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬, who collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Izuku felt a rush of adrenaline, realizing he had just fought 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬. As Ichigo shouted for him to act, Izuku used his quirk, blasting his fist upwards and destroying the roof, declaring victory for the hero team before collapsing himself. Aizawa was frustrated as he hurried to Recovery Girl's room, muttering about the teacher's inadequacies. He burst into the room, immediately noticing Nana sitting beside Izuku's bed. Recovery Girl reassured him that Izuku was alright, just a little shaken up after the battle and reluctant to share the details. Aizawa sighed, his gaze fixed on Nana, who looked away in embarrassment. They needed to have a serious conversation, and Nana nodded, following him out of the room. After school, Mina and Momo visited Izuku, laying down beside him on the hospital bed, with Mina on his right and Momo on his left. Mina informed him that 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐬 had been suspended for a week and would have to do all the house chores, which she felt was deserved for hurting him. Izuku sighed, feeling that they were overreacting. He could heal himself, but they insisted on keeping him there for safety reasons. Suddenly, Mina and Momo exchanged determined glances, leaving Izuku confused about their intentions. He felt a hand slip under the covers, and he blushed, surprised. Momo looked at him playfully, while Mina appeared embarrassed. The hand began to unbutton his breathes, and Izuku felt a rush of heat. As his breathes were pulled down, he realized he was only in his boxers. He felt nervous, his heart racing. Momo playfully commented on the warmth of his skin, and in that moment, Izuku was overwhelmed by the affection surrounding him. Izuku opened his eyes and saw Momo struggling. He detached from Mina, a trail of slime between their mouths. He urged Momo not to push herself. Momo looked at him, her eyes watery and her face flushed. She nodded, and Izuku returned to kissing Mina while Momo took a moment to compose herself. Momo then began to give him attention, her movements rhythmic as she focused on him. Izuku felt a rush of pleasure, his body responding instinctively as he experienced a wave of joy. After a moment, Momo pulled away, and they all took a breath, the atmosphere charged with excitement. Momo approached Izuku and kissed him deeply, holding his head in her hands, suggesting they continue their fun later in the dorms. Izuku nodded, a blush on his face as Momo playfully tied a used condom into a balloon, the sound of the LTX squeaking as she held it. Mina helped him adjust his clothes, both girls giving him a quick peck on the cheek before leaving. Izuku felt a happy anticipation for what was to come. As they walked together, Mina and Momo were joined by Izuku, Ichiko, and Ida. Ichiko asked Izuku why he wanted to be a hero, and he paused, looking thoughtful and a bit sad. He admitted he wasn't sure. Ichiko and Ida exchanged surprised glances, questioning how someone so motivated could feel uncertain about his goals. Just then, an explosion erupted nearby, causing Izuku to stumble back. The bright light blinded him momentarily, and as he regained his composure, he felt a weight on him. Confused, he groped around, trying to understand what had happened. Ichiko shouted his name, clearly disturbed, while Ida expressed his disappointment at Izuku's uncharacteristic behavior. As Izuku's vision cleared, he realized he had accidentally landed in an awkward position with a pink-haired girl. He quickly apologized, embarrassed. The girl laughed, teasing him about his reaction, and helped him to his feet. 𝗟𝗯𝐿 appeared, frustrated about the chaos caused by the explosion and the mishap with the equipment. He sighed, telling them to clean up the mess before walking away. Izuku felt a mix of embarrassment and admiration as the girl complimented his physique, suggesting he would make a great test subject. She invited him to her workshop after school on Friday, leaving him intrigued as she walked away. Izuku couldn't help but think about the unexpected attention he was receiving, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness about what lay ahead. Izuku, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 has crashed. Izuku and 𝗟𝗏𝐿 walked out of the nurse's office, ready to clean the debris stuck in his face, while the other three headed to class. Ichiko shuddered at what Recovery Girl had said, noting how fortunate Izuku was that the piece had landed just a millimeter above his eye, as it could have blinded him for life. She sighed, acknowledging that she would ensure May faced consequences for her actions, as this wasn't the first time such an incident had occurred. With a sigh, she told Izuku he was free to go. Ichiko was in turmoil. Not only had Izuku experienced an uncomfortable situation, but another girl had also gotten too close to him. She had to admit that she struggled with being clingy, especially since she had seen Izuku spending time with Mina and Momo, which made her feel jealous. The girls Izuku seemed to attract made her self-conscious about her appearance. While she was a modest A cup, Mina was a B cup, Momo was a D cup, and May was clearly an E cup. Ichiko sighed, expressing her frustration aloud without realizing it. When Izuku asked her what she had said, she quickly denied it, feeling her cheeks flush as he tilted his head to the side, looking adorably confused. At that moment, Midnight made her presence known, playfully slithering behind Izuku and pushing him into her. Izuku yelped in surprise, looking up at her in confusion. Midnight, with a sultry grin, playfully tousled his hair, calling him by a nickname. Izuku blushed deeply, feeling her presence close to him. Ichiko, recovering from the situation, urged Midnight to let him go, sensing his discomfort. Midnight, seeming to notice Ichiko for the first time, laughed mischievously, teasing that she had competition before releasing Izuku. She leaned down and gave Izuku a quick kiss on the cheek before walking away, her high heels clicking on the tiles as she swayed her hips. Ichiko felt a surge of anger and concern for Izuku, asking if he was okay. He looked away, still blushing, and thanked her. Just then Ida yelled from across the hallway, urging them to hurry to class. Achiko felt frustrated, wishing Ida hadn't interrupted her moment with Izuku. Noticing the change in her demeanor, Izuku asked if she was all right. She forced a smile, assuring him she was fine, and together they walked into the classroom. The bus rocked steadily along the bumpy road, the driver speeding far too fast for comfort. The students held on tightly, finally using their seatbelts. Ida attempted to reprimand the driver, but his warning was cut short when the driver hit a bump, sending Ida flying toward the ceiling. Fortunately, Momo quickly used her quirk to pull him back down just in time. Ida, flustered, began to apologize for making her use her quirk, but then realized she had done so illegally and started to reprimand her. The rest of the bus watched in silence, while the driver chuckled, seemingly oblivious to the chaos. Aizawa, sitting near the front, slept soundly through the entire ride, unaffected by the bumps, leaving everyone to wonder if he was somehow invincible. Finally, the bus came to a stop, allowing its flustered occupants to disembark. Mina leaned against Izuku for support, expressing her disbelief at how fast the bus had gone. Izuku patted her back, trying to ease her discomfort. Mina leaned into his comforting touch, thanking him with a bright smile. Achiko noticed this interaction, feeling a wave of jealousy wash over her. As Bakugo walked by, he snickered at Achiko, making a teasing remark that made her momentarily lose focus. She stuttered in response, trying to process his words, but Bakugo simply glared at her, demanding she get out of his way. As she moved aside, he shouldered her roughly, causing her to wince in pain. She lightly touched her side, questioning her own appearance, feeling insecure about herself. The teens marveled at the large, dome-like structure, which was clearly bigger than 5 football stadiums. 𝐿𝐬 remarked that it spoke volumes about how high-tech and wealthy you really was. Her cheeks warmed as Momo gave her a tight hug. 𝐿𝐬 had always known she had a crush on Momo, but what if Momo didn't feel the same way? From the moment she met her, 𝐿𝐬 had fallen in love, not only with Momo's looks but also her charm and intelligence. Momo's nurturing and caring demeanor, always listening to others, made her the mother figure of Class 1. Momo was everything 𝐿𝐬 felt she was not. Momo chuckled, noticing 𝐿𝐬's nervousness. She could tell that 𝐿𝐬's voice and posture revealed her inner turmoil. Momo asked if 𝐿𝐬 wanted to talk about it, as she had been acting this way for a while. 𝐿𝐬 would never admit to anyone that she was bisexual, leaning mostly toward being a lesbian. Such feelings were often frowned upon by society, and she shuddered at the thought of what could happen to her. Wiggling out of Momo's grip, 𝐿𝐬 thought about how much she loved her friend and how she didn't want her to get hurt. She sighed and expressed her gratitude for Momo's concern, though she couldn't bring herself to share her feelings. Momo looked somewhat sullen at 𝐿𝐬's denial but reassured her that she was there if she ever wanted to talk. 𝐿𝐬 forced a smile and acknowledged Momo's kindness. Aizawa then spoke up, informing the class that they would be assessed on how they could handle their quirks through the USJ when the doors opened loudly. 13 turned her bright eyes on the students, wondering where Nana was. She introduced the USJ, also known as the Unexpected Simulation Joint, which had cost millions of dollars. This would be their training area along with Ground Gamma, and she waved for them to come inside. Aizawa grumbled in annoyance at the interruption, his sleepless eyes glaring at 13th's spacesuit. Everyone gaped in awe at the massive USJ, with golden light streaming through the glass panels, enhancing its majesty. Kirishima joked that the USJ should be called Universal Studios Japan, earning laughter from everyone, including a small scoff from the blonde standing close to him. Suddenly, Izuku shouted that something was coming. Everyone looked at him in disbelief, seeing nothing but emptiness. Izuku powered up his quirk and became a blur of movement, his fist connecting with something unseen. The students gasped in surprise as a mist-like figure crashed to the ground, skidding toward the steps leading down to the main area. The figure grunted in pain, its misty eyes locking onto Izuku. It stammered that Izuku must have been the one the 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼 had mentioned. With a flick of its weak hand, misty portals began to appear, and the students looked on in horror as villains stepped through. Izuku and 𝗟𝗏 assumed fighting stances, urging everyone to get back to the door. The children sprinted toward the exit, only to find a portal appearing in front of them. They tried to stop, but their momentum carried them through, skiing them in. Only Iida managed to dodge using his turbo boosters, but the turn was too sharp, and he crashed into the wall at high speed. A sickening sound echoed as he impacted the hard surface, slumping to the ground. Izuku glared at the mist figure, cracking his fingers and wearing a fierce smile, ready to confront the impending chaos. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐃𝐞𝐭 sipped his tea from a classic white teacup. If it weren't for his role as 𝐒𝐮𝐬 principal and the fact that 𝐒𝐮𝐬 could be quite intimidating when his mood soured, Nana would have squeezed the huggable bundle of cuteness while expressing her joy. The principal was a hybrid of ermine, bear, mouse, and dog, experimented on by humans due to his quirk, high specs, which granted him intelligence surpassing even the most brilliant humans. While the bear rarely spoke of his troubling past, his mood could quickly shift to one that was tremendously scary or even erratic, enough to send even Gal Might running for cover. Unfortunately, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was discussing Izuku's difficult background, and his mood had turned ominous, making Nana tremble as she kept a wary eye on him. The bear straightened his tie and stated that their resources indicated Izuku was what Izuku would call a problem child. He noted that Izuku had not been attending classes, backtalking teachers, and bullying classmates. Nana tilted her head, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear with her bright yellow glove, and pointed out that despite these issues, Izuku had the best grades and the most motivation in the entire class. She added that he had never been a problem, except for his tendency to injure himself during training. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 gently set his cup down on the mahogany table between them and continued, explaining that he had done some digging and discovered videotapes kept at a police headquarters next to Mustafa General Hospital. He had gained clearance to view the tapes, and the expression on his face was one Nana had never seen before. He revealed that Izuku had been subjected to severe mistreatment, including physical abuse, and that 𝗏𝗏𝐽 had been present during some of these incidents but had not intervened. The moment 𝗏𝗏𝐽's lackeys had pushed Izuku into the boys' bathroom, he had left, leading 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to believe that 𝗏𝗏𝐽 was aware of the situation. Nana gasped at the shocking revelation, struggling to process the information. She had witnessed the horrors of what people could do, but the thought of such cruelty being inflicted on a child was unfathomable. 𝐒𝐮𝐬's ears drooped momentarily before perking up at the sound of faint footsteps. A tall girl with long black hair, leggings, and a turtleneck entered the room. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 greeted her warmly, having anticipated her arrival, and brewed another cup of tea to share, as they were both tea enthusiasts. Nana felt intimidated by the girl who took a seat beside her. The girl's eyes seemed to tell a story of horrors that even Nana had yet to experience. Towering over Nana by nearly a foot, she was an unusual sight in Japan, where the average height for girls was much shorter. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 filled the newcomer in on the situation, and in a moment of frustration she smashed the table, breaking it in half. Nana had never witnessed someone so angry and sad simultaneously. It was a stark contrast to how most women in Japan tended to suppress their emotions. After the incident, the tall woman quickly apologized and began cleaning up the spilled tea, but 𝐒𝐮𝐬 reassured her that it was fine, joking that he now had an excuse for a new rug and table. With a defeated sigh, the tall woman noted that the footage was more than enough to take legal action against the school for what they had done to Izuku. Just then, the double doors burst open, and a police officer rushed in, his dull beige eyes wide with panic and sweat glistening on his face. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 stood up and pressed a button on his executive desk, which displayed his most impressive awards, including the Fields Medal and the Nobel Prize. Speaking into a microphone in a calm and collected manner, he announced a code alert. He then approached the two women and indicated that they would discuss matters later. Nana dashed out in a blur of black, white, and yellow, while the tall girl remained behind. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 urged her to follow, emphasizing that even without a combat quirk, her training made her more than capable of helping. He encouraged her to protect Izuku, expressing his belief that she was the one who could help him heal from his past experiences and hardships. Izuku found himself facing the blue-haired villain, glaring from a distance at the man-child. The villain screeched in frustration, scratching at his neck as if he were suffering from something far worse than poison ivy. His severed hands barely concealed his golden amber eyes and twisted smile as he began walking toward Izuku, much to the villain's dismay. Izuku's cold, calculating emerald eyes were fixed on the villain's every move, every step, and every breath. A familiar voice growled, warning the unstable boy to be cautious. The edge of his vision was soon invaded by the barrel of a gun. The villain halted in his tracks, raising his hands in mock surrender, claiming he was merely asking the kid about his motives. A voice interrupted, firmly stating that he would do no such thing, with a finger poised on the trigger. The warning was clear: stand down. The villain, taken aback, demanded to know how she knew his name. With a grin, she revealed that his adoptive mother had told her about him, and looking at him now, she understood why he had been abandoned at the orphanage. Nobody would want a family killer like him. The man-child clenched his fists, casting a sad expression toward the green boy. He shared his own painful past, revealing that he had killed his family when his quirk manifested. He had been adopted by someone Izuku used to idolize, but she never recognized the good in him, no matter how hard he tried. He had no idea why she adopted him, but he had embraced his worthlessness and became a villain to change the world for the greater good. Tamura flashed a wicked grin, his eyes piercing into Izuku's soul. He lifted his sleeves, revealing scarred arms marked with lines of cuts, both new and old, his grin widening as he proclaimed that they were the same. Suddenly, a portal appeared before him, swallowing him up, and both the mist villain and Tamura vanished. Nearly all of Class 1A was hospitalized. Although Izuku was fine, he was still checked out at the hospital, suspecting that the staff was overreacting. However, inside, he was suffering more with each passing hour, his mind spiraling into dark thoughts. Momo surprisingly was fine, suffering only a slight concussion and a sprained ankle, but Izuku knew that her injuries were serious. He and Mina held hands while staying in Momo's hospital room, exchanging few words. The most affected, however, was Aizawa, who surprisingly had a visitor, Ms. Joke. Class 1A was given a break, and once they returned from the hospital or their homes, they were required by Nizu to attend counseling with Hound Dog. Pitohui was reserved for the worst cases, like Mineta or Momo, who had suffered the most from the encounter. Izuku stayed with his mother, who cried for him, nearly flooding the house with her tears, clinging to him tightly. They both fell asleep on the couch, his mother holding him close as if he might fly away and never return. When Izuku woke up, he liked his parched lips, drool running down his chin as the warmth of the morning light streamed through the windows. He felt a hand gently stroking his green hair. His mother greeted him with a soft voice, asking if he had slept well. It took him a moment to respond, his head resting on her lap, feeling slightly embarrassed. She asked him to look at her, and as he shifted, he blushed harder, nearly overwhelmed by her presence. She scooped his head into her arms, leaning down to plant a loving kiss on his nose. She reminded him that she was there for him, expressing how much he meant to her and how dearly she loved him. As she traced the scars on his arm, she thought about something important and then announced that she would make breakfast. She asked him to take a shower as they were going to Yui for a meeting. Izuku and his mother shifted in their sleep, with Izuku now the big spoon, embracing her gently as she rested against the couch. He grunted softly and nestled into the crook of her neck, slightly stirring her from her slumber but not enough to wake her. He admired her beauty in a hushed tone, feeling a warmth in his heart as he breathed in the moment. Inko was suddenly fully awake, recognizing a scent she hadn't encountered since Izuku left for you. She felt a mix of emotions as she realized he was dreaming about someone special. A sudden noise caught her attention, and she looked down, her heart racing. She gasped softly, surprised by the unexpected sight before her, her mind racing with thoughts and feelings. The mother hesitated for a moment, but her fascination quickly took over as she played with the substance in her hand, much like a child with slime. She marveled at the powerful scent, letting it slide down her arm while creating delicate strands between her fingers. With admiration in her eyes, she thought about how her son would one day bring strong and loving grandchildren into the world, just like him. Her tongue brushed against her arm, where a warm liquid had flowed down onto the couch. She savored the taste, relishing it as if it were a sweet treat, feeling a warm sensation spread throughout her body, a feeling deeper than just maternal love. The green bean found himself on his bed, morning sunlight filtering through the blinds, the room devoid of any posters or memorabilia. He felt a sticky substance in his boxers and quickly lifted the hem to check, confirming his suspicions. A yellowish substance covered him, a result of a vivid dream from the night before. The unpleasant odor filled his nostrils, and he realized with horror that his mother must have cleaned up while he was sleeping. He felt exposed yet strangely overwhelmed by a mix of emotions. Izuku had once struggled with a complex that made him feel both delighted and terrified. His thoughts raced as he mumbled to himself, not fully aware of his surroundings. Suddenly, he heard a chuckle and turned, instinctively covering himself. His mother appeared youthful, not a day over 20, with a figure that drew attention. She smiled at him, her voice warm as she remarked on his well-being, playfully expressing her longing for grandchildren. Izuku felt a rush of embarrassment, wishing he could disappear. His mother wore a short skirt that left little to the imagination, and he couldn't help but notice her attire. Just then, the doorbell rang, and his mother's smile widened. She encouraged him to get ready, leaving him with a teasing remark about personal hygiene that made him blush even more. Izuku was surprised to see Mitsuki, his aunt, sitting at the dinner table with a playful expression. She greeted him with a teasing smile, and he felt a wave of anxiety wash over him as he stammered, urging her to consider her partner. Mitsuki's playful demeanor shifted as she frowned, and Izuku panicked, not wanting to upset her. She walked up to the green-haired boy and playfully ruffled his hair, a warm smile gracing her lips. She remarked on his innocence, noting how pure he was. Inko's footsteps halted at the table, and the delicious aroma of katsudon filled the air as she set the bowls down, the sound of chopsticks clattering softly. It smelled delightful. Izuku was jolted from his thoughts, instinctively flinching at the sudden noise. Inko spoke apologetically, explaining that she had intended to inform Mitsuki about Izuku's multiple quirks. He realized he was no longer standing but sitting in front of the katsudon, unsure if he had floated or teleported there. Looking down, he mumbled an apology. Mitsuki approached him, enveloping him in a warm hug, reassuring him that there was nothing to worry about. She continued, her eyes searching his, a tear glistening at the corner of her eye. Their noses nearly touched as she spoke, her breath carrying the scent of mint and coffee. She expressed her regret for teasing him and acknowledged the pain he had endured, admitting that they wanted to protect him from the world but felt they had failed. A tear rolled down her cheek as she recalled a painful memory, and Izuku was too shocked to respond. Mitsuki remembered a time when he had tried to alter his body in hopes of gaining a quirk. She felt a deep sense of failure, especially after what Bakugo had said. Overwhelmed with emotion, she struggled to find her words, and Inko stepped in, offering comfort. She explained that they wanted to be more than just mother and aunt to him. Izuku, caught in a whirlwind of emotions, leaned in and kissed Mitsuki, surprising her. He had a deep appreciation for kind, loving women, and both of his newfound companions fit that description perfectly. While he didn't focus on their looks, he couldn't deny that they were all attractive. As he pulled away, his cheeks flushed, and a sense of warmth enveloped him. Inko leaned in closer, expressing her love for him, her eyes sparkling with affection. Later, Izuku found himself on a rooftop, his legs dangling off the edge, reflecting on the events that had transpired in his life. It was the same spot where he had once contemplated giving up, a place where his dreams had felt crushed. He reminisced about the hardships and abuse he had faced, feeling the weight of dark thoughts clouding his mind. A light breeze brushed against him, and he absent-mindedly shifted a few stray hairs from his face. In a flashback, a young Izuku stood in a dimly lit bathroom, fixated on a small knife glinting in the moonlight. A dark figure loomed over it, and a twisted grin spread across his face. He spoke to his reflection, contemplating a drastic decision in hopes of gaining a quirk. As he prepared to make a cut, he flinched at the pain, unaware of the chaos unfolding around him. His mother entered the bathroom, horror etched on her face as she gasped at the sight. Izuku, confused, tried to explain that he was only trying to make her happy, but the fear in her eyes was something he had never seen before. He shook off the memory, struggling to calm himself as he took a deep breath. Suddenly, he was startled by a voice, nearly losing his balance. He turned to see a girl in a striking outfit beside him, her smile warm as she patted him on the shoulder. She playfully swiped the cigarette from his hand, enjoying a moment of mischief. Izuku's hands trembled slightly, a longing for the comfort of the nicotine evident in his eyes. Despite the girl's own indulgence, she maintained a careful balance, a reminder of the struggle he faced. Izuku searched for his box of cigarettes but couldn't find them, frowning at Midnight, who wore a serious expression. She had tucked his cigarette box into her waistband and flicked the cigarette off the rooftop. She asked about his mother, breaking the tension slightly. Izuku stammered that she was fine, but Midnight's gloomy demeanor contrasted sharply with her usual playful and flirtatious nature. She mentioned that she had heard about what happened to him from Nizu and reassured him that he could talk to her whenever he felt ready. Without the nicotine, Izuku began to scratch his arm, seeking a distraction as his thoughts spiraled. Midnight noticed his distress and expressed concern, suggesting they move away from the edge of the rooftop. He nodded, and they settled next to each other, leaning against the old door that led to the rooftop. Silence enveloped them, broken only by the sound of Izuku's scratching. Midnight pleaded with him to stop, her worry evident as she saw the dullness in his green eyes and a tear forming. She gently took his hand away from his arm, causing him to flinch and snap out of his trance. Resting his hand on her knee, she used her left hand to keep him from hurting himself while her right hand stroked his green hair. It was an unusual position for her, but seeing a hint of color return to his eyes made it worthwhile. When he turned to her, he remarked that this was where it all began, and Midnight looked at him with confusion. He continued, revealing that this was where he had once contemplated ending his life. The shock and sadness in Midnight's heart nearly overwhelmed her. It took a moment for her to respond. As Izuku stood up and brushed himself off, he walked toward a small vent. Midnight quickly followed, fearing he might do something regrettable. He opened the vent, searching for something. Small thumps echoed as his hand shifted inside, and he pulled out a laminated note along with something black. Midnight's heart raced as she realized it was a gun. She lunged at him, and he shrieked, the gun clattering to the ground as she pinned him down. He exclaimed that it wasn't loaded, and she demanded to know why he had it. He explained that he had found it in an alley, insisting it was the truth. Midnight's gaze hardened as she pressed for the full story. He hesitated but eventually whispered that a bully had placed it in his desk with a note suggesting he find bullets and end his life. After searching for a week without success, he had considered taking that final step. Midnight's expression shifted from anger to concern as she instructed him not to move while she reached for the gun. She clicked the SWH, and an empty magazine slid out, confirming his words. After reloading it and holstering it, she felt the weight of the metal pressing against her thigh. She released Izuku, both retreating back to the door, though Midnight couldn't shake the urge to glance at the note. Izuku shook his head, fingers twitching as he mumbled to himself about not being okay. He expressed feelings of never being truly happy, lamenting the loss of his innocence and questioning his purpose. He used to want to be a hero, but his perspective had changed. As he spiraled deeper into despair, Midnight struggled to respond, but the sound of childish laughter chilled her to the bone. Izuku's demeanor shifted as he grinned maniacally, reflecting on the irony of having a quirk while feeling so lost and hopeless. Midnight discreetly tapped an alert button on her phone, realizing the gravity of the situation. She recognized the potential danger he posed if he resisted. Despite being labeled a bad influence by others, she was determined to help him. She tried to calm him by scratching his hair, but he slapped her hand away, insisting he wasn't weak. As he paced the rooftop, Midnight urged him to let her help and suggested calling for an ambulance, expressing her concern for his safety. He scowled, dismissing her concern, and Midnight prepared to activate her quirk, knowing she had to act quickly. A crash echoed through the area as a familiar number 1 hero stood with her hands on her hips and a smile on her face. However, her expression faltered when she saw Izuku. Nemuri spoke with urgency, expressing her concern for him. She insisted that he needed help, emphasizing that he was unstable and that they had to take him down for the safety of others. Nana attempted to reason with him, urging Izuku to come quietly so they could assist him. The boy trembled, his hair obscuring his face as he questioned the point of it all, his voice filled with raw emotion. A single green eye emerged as he shook his head, his pupil dilated to the point of near invisibility. Suddenly he was enveloped in a black neon glow, and before anyone could react, the ground shook violently as Nana prepared to deliver a knockout blow. To her shock, Izuku caught her fist with one hand, pulling her closer. His grip tightened around her neck, lifting her off the ground as she struggled to breathe. In a panic, she fought back, unintentionally unleashing her full power in desperation. This caused Izuku to release his hold, stumbling backward and coughing. His voice erupted in a furious cry, filled with frustration and despair. Nana's life flashed before her eyes as she sensed the overwhelming power and intent radiating from him, more intense than she had ever encountered. Realizing the gravity of the situation, she pushed her fear aside and activated her own abilities. In that moment, a loud bang rang out as a high-powered gun fired. Within seconds, Izuku collapsed to the ground, twitching as sparks flew from his body. Nana's eyes widened in disbelief as she saw 𝗏𝗏 had snuck up behind him, using a modified railgun. With a sad expression, she murmured her gratitude to Mei for the weapon that had saved her. Izuku was fidgeting in his seat, 𝗏𝗏 on his right, her legs crossed and holding a cup of tea, and his mother on his left, playing with her son's hair in an effort to calm him down. 𝗏𝐬 took a sip of his tea before placing it on the new wooden table. He got straight to the point, informing Izuku that they had proof of bullying, assault, and illegal quirk usage. Inko felt a chill run through her as she struggled to process the information. 𝗏𝐬 then asked if Izuku would like to press charges. Inko's mind raced, and she chuckled nervously, asking him to repeat himself, unsure if she had heard correctly. 𝗏𝐬 maintained a serious expression, reiterating his question. It took a moment for Inko to fully comprehend his words. Her body shook as she unknowingly activated her quirk, pulling the teacup towards her. Tears welled in her eyes as she pulled her son into a tight embrace, exclaiming that she couldn't believe what she was hearing. It took a few minutes for her to regain her composure enough to speak. Izuku's therapist leaned over to rub her shoulder, trying to provide comfort. Inko expressed her frustration about the bullying, revealing that the principal had done nothing despite her monthly visits. She had asked Izuku if he wanted the police involved, but he had insisted it wasn't that serious, until now. Izuku felt frozen, caught off guard by the gravity of the situation. He stammered that everything was okay, but his mother, overwhelmed with emotion, insisted that it was not. She held onto him tightly, her distress palpable. 𝗏𝐬 nodded in approval as 𝗏𝗏 deftly caught the teacup from the air, placing it back on the table to prevent any accidents. 𝗏𝐬 looked into Izuku's eyes, understanding his silent plea. When asked if he wanted to be part of the proceedings, Izuku shook his head, requesting that Bakugo not get in trouble. Tears began to pool in his emerald eyes. It took Inko 15 minutes to fully calm down from her emotional high, and another 2 for her quirk to deactivate. All that remained was a whimpering mother, clutching her son as if her life depended on it. 𝗏𝐬 then indicated that there were a few other matters they needed to discuss. The familiar sensation of being lifted off the ground enveloped him, ascending into a bright white light that pulled him deeper into a vast abyss, darker than space yet brighter than 1,000,000,000,000 suns. Flickers of colors he never thought possible danced around his vision like shooting stars. This was it, the end credits to his life. He felt a profound peace, his thoughts becoming jumbled as he drifted into the abyss. He whispered questions that echoed in the silence, feeling himself being pulled away from the warmth that had embraced him. Desperation surged within him as he tried to grasp onto something, but he felt weightless, devoid of body and mind. Izuku awoke on a soft mattress, his eyes blank and gray. Memories flooded back, including the day his father had hurt him severely. It was the day his mother had bravely intervened, managing to get him outside before they were pulled back in. a storm of fury waiting for her. He flinched at the memory, a stray tear rolling down his cheek. A familiar voice broke through his thoughts as he turned to see a comforting face adorned with a tattoo pattern on her cheek, resting in an uncomfortable hospital chair. He tried to rise, only to find himself restrained by 𝐒𝐮𝐷𝐶FFS attached to the bed frame. Panic surged within him, and he instinctively crossed his legs, sobbing as he pleaded for mercy. Sensing his distress, 𝐼𝐻𝐻 reached out, gently wiping away his tears. She reassured him that she was there for him, urging him to calm down. As she looked into his wavering emerald eyes, he began to relax, the fear fading away. In that moment, she felt a deep connection to him, wanting nothing more than to help him overcome his struggles and live the life he deserved. She unbuckled the 𝐻𝐻𝐷𝐶FFS, allowing him to rub at his wrists, lost in thought. Wrapping her arms around him, he initially tensed at her touch but soon leaned into her warmth, silently crying against her chest. She rocked him gently until he fell asleep in her embrace, a small smile gracing his face. He was everything to her. A small creak alerted her to another presence in the room. A shy voice asked if Izuku was okay. Turning around, 𝐼𝐻𝐻 saw a familiar shade of pink, tears welling in golden eyes. She sensed the overwhelming hopelessness surrounding her friend. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 reassured Mina that everything would be fine. Izuku was broken, but that didn't mean they couldn't help him heal. Mina's gaze dropped to the floor, her sobs echoing in the room as she expressed her fears about Izuku's worsening condition. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 placed a comforting hand on Mina's shoulder, sharing a secret that Izuku had confided in her. He had told her that aside from his mother, Mina, Momo, and 𝐼𝐻𝐻 were the reasons he wanted to keep fighting. As long as they were in his life, he believed he could get better. With a small grin, she invited Mina to join her, hoping to lift her spirits. Izuku was sent back to his house after being discharged from the hospital. Mina asked 𝐼𝐻𝐻 if she could stay with Izuku, and 𝐼𝐻𝐻 happily agreed, knowing the bond between the two. After a lot of hugging and emotional moments, they finally returned home, with 𝐼𝐻𝐻 carrying a sleeping Izuku to the car. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 expressed her gratitude and shared her address with the army girl, who smiled in response. Izuku woke up groggily in his bed, a sweet scent filling his nostrils. He opened his eyes to see who he suspected was beside him. He gently nudged Mina to wake her up, but she remained fast asleep. He felt a slight shiver as he realized how close they were, her warm breath brushing against his lips. The sweet scent of her minty breath mixed with her natural fragrance was almost mesmerizing. He wanted to express his feelings for her, but he knew it was important to respect her boundaries. Instead, he placed a quick peck on her cheek before carefully getting out of bed, trying not to disturb her. As he closed the door softly behind him, Izuku let out a sigh of relief. Her presence in his bed stirred up a whirlwind of emotions within him. He began to search for his mother, only to realize she had left him alone at home with Mina. A blush crept onto his face as he thought about the situation. He felt the urge to use the bathroom and headed that way, unaware of the pink-haired girl quietly following him, her golden eyes filled with playful thoughts. As he relieved himself, he was startled when Mina called out to him, causing him to pause mid-action. In fear, nearly falling off the toilet seat, a familiar pink-haired girl stood in front of him, watching him intensely. He fidgeted, feeling uncomfortable, his cheeks turning a deep shade of red as she had caught him in an embarrassing situation. She suddenly grabbed his legs, causing him to tremble slightly in surprise. With a swift motion, she pulled him closer, positioning him at the edge of the toilet. Her gaze was filled with an overwhelming affection as she declared her feelings for him, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Blank's body shook as waves of pleasure coursed through him. Mina quickly discovered that she had found a powerful way to bring him to his limits, the most intense reaction she had ever witnessed from him overwhelming her senses. As some bubbles emerged, she counted the moments, feeling a rush of excitement. The experience lasted for a while, and she reveled in the sensations, enjoying the connection they shared. Up, down, his movements reminded her that he was alive, that he was real, not some imaginary friend. Mina rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat and feeling each inhale and exhale of her lover's being. Her hand casually traced the edges of his boxers, and she looked at him with a hungry gaze as he slept soundly. Both companions were in their underwear. Her little green bean wore his usual checkered boxers, and Mina sported green boy shorts. To her surprise, she caught him glancing at her more than a few times. Her bare skin pressed against his arm, and she felt a warmth spread through her as she thought about their connection. However, her mind drifted to Momo, and the thought of her friend made her feel a pang of sadness. She remembered seeing Momo flung across the USJ, and the thought of her friend's peril made her shiver slightly. Mina looked up towards the slowly opening door, a pair of emerald eyes piercing through the nighttime darkness. She silently beckoned him to come closer. She put on a white t-shirt. Surely it was Izuku's, as it was 2 sizes too big and long enough to reach her shapely figure. Unsure if it was on correctly in the dark, she gave her sleeping lover a gentle peck on the cheek before quietly slipping out into the hallway. She made her way to the living room, her golden eyes slowly adjusting to the light. There, she found 𝐒𝐮𝐬 and another woman she recognized as Mitsuki. Mitsuki's hair was unkempt, her eyes redder than usual, and dark circles suggested she had been crying recently. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 smiled softly and patted the couch cushion next to her, inviting the cute Pinkette to sit. Mina's bare feet patted softly on the wooden floor as she made her way to the couch, which squeaked slightly as she sat down, making her blush in embarrassment. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 took her hand and squeezed it gently, asking if her son was treating her well. Mina nodded, assuring 𝐒𝐮𝐬 that he was as sweet and innocent as she expected. 𝐒𝐮𝐬's curiosity led her to ask a more personal question, and Mina felt her cheeks heat up. She stammered, trying to explain their NTMT moments without going into detail. She felt a mix of embarrassment and shyness as she spoke. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 and Mitsuki exchanged glances, and Mina noticed Mitsuki leaning closer to 𝐒𝐮𝐬, a hint of a secret relationship lingering in the air. Mina's heart raced as she confessed a little more than she intended, feeling a wave of shame wash over her. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 chuckled softly, reminiscing about Izuku's childhood, and Mina felt a sense of camaraderie with the two women. Mina was now sitting on Izuku's lap, his hands around her waist, feeling secure in their bond. She reflected on her experiences with both Momo and Izuku, her heart filled with love and concern. She didn't want to feel like she was being used, and she shivered at the thought of being treated as an object. But Izuku exceeded her expectations. He was kind and caring, and that was what mattered most to her. She felt the warmth of his body against hers, and a playful grin crossed her face as she teased him a little. She turned her attention to Mitsuki, who seemed composed and confident, and Mina felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity about the woman who was Izuku's mother. They were going to have a conversation later, and Mina was eager to see where it would lead. But now her strong and powerful image was replaced by worry and discomfort. The blonde sputtered, struggling to find the right words, while 𝐒𝐮𝐬's voice filled the silence first. She stated that she and Mitsuki were in a relationship. Mina's eyes widened in surprise at this revelation, while Izuku remained oblivious to the implications. He questioned what was wrong, his voice tinged with concern. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 chuckled softly, finding humor in Izuku's innocence, and then clarified that they were in a romantic relationship. How did he make it? The deafening silence of the room nearly had Bakugo on the verge of losing his temper. The only thing keeping him from smashing the dinner table into splinters was the intense glare from his mother, her scarlet eyes piercing through him with a clear message: "Don't you dare, or there will be consequences." A tall girl with a tattoo on her cheek was watching him with anger, and his homeroom teacher was present as well, looking surprisingly well-rested, which gave him an uneasy feeling. A man in a trench coat, claiming to have authority, had led them into the house, flashing a police badge that Bakugo found unimpressive. If that shady figure tried anything funny, he would not hesitate to put him in his place. Bakugo's frustration bubbled over as he thought about the situation. The man began asking questions about his relationship with Izuku Midoriya, and Bakugo's fist slammed onto the table, teeth gritted in anger. He was certain Midoriya had betrayed him. He thought about how he would deal with him when he returned to school. The detective's voice cut through his thoughts, asking if he had ever hurt Midoriya. Bakugo's anger flared as he replied with a firm no. His teeth clenched tightly. The detective continued, asking if Midoriya was quirkless. Bakugo growled in response, insisting that Midoriya was just a nuisance in his path, someone he could easily step over. The detective took notes, pressing further by asking if Bakugo had ever bullied Midoriya. The tall girl shifted uncomfortably in her seat at the kitchen table. Bakugo cursed under his breath, realizing he had inadvertently revealed his actions. He hoped they wouldn't dig deeper. When asked who had put Midoriya in his place, Bakugo scoffed, claiming it was everyone, the principal, the teachers, the students. His rant was abruptly halted as the tall girl shot him a glare filled with malice, causing him to momentarily lose his breath. Her words echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of the consequences of his actions. All she could do was listen as her son's wrongdoings were brought to light. It took a full-fledged effort to keep the bile from rising in her throat. She thought about discussing the rest with him privately next week. She dared to glance at Bakugo, too ashamed to meet his gaze or call him her son. She wasn't mad, just disappointed. Mitsuki kept her gaze away from Bakugo, feeling the sympathy directed at her from the detective and the heroes. She whispered to herself, questioning why he did it and what the other boy had ever done to deserve such treatment. A 𝐼𝐼𝐷 silence covered the room, and she felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She inhaled deeply, asking what he meant. Her husband shifted uncomfortably in his chair, an action that did not go unnoticed by her. Bakugo snickered, suggesting that Masaru had informed her. It took a moment for those words to register, and shock spread across the faces of the guests. For the first time, her husband spoke up, trying to intervene, but Mitsuki's clenched hands slammed onto the table, causing vibrations to ripple through the room. She ignored the pain in her fists as she demanded to know if he knew. Her husband tried to explain, but he was cut off as the tall girl attempted to lunge at him. The homeroom teacher quickly restrained her, muffling her words. The detective held a grim expression, and Mitsuki knew she had to make a decision that could affect her life forever. Her mind raced between right and wrong, her fists trembling as silence enveloped the group, save for the muffled struggles directed at Masaru. 10 minutes passed, and the girl's cries had long ceased. Mitsuki stood up from her seat, unable to look at her husband or her son, feeling the weight of their stares. She declared that she was giving them an hour to pack their things and leave her home, asking Aizawa to ensure they followed through. Her voice wavered, and tears threatened to spill from her eyes as she removed her diamond ring and tossed it onto the table, where it clattered until it came to a stop. Her husband tried to reason with her, but a tear rolled down her cheek as she insisted they leave and not return, making it clear that this was final. The two heroes and the detective watched as Mitsuki slipped out into the night. Masaru looked down at the ring in shame, tears streaming down his face, while Bakugo stared into space, his face flushed with anger. The underground hero growled at them to get moving, glaring as they walked like zombies to pack their belongings. Mitsuki cried into Inko's arms, feeling her best friend patting her back. She lamented her perceived failures and questioned how her son could have done such a thing, fearing that Inko must hate her. When Inko stopped patting her back, Mitsuki feared the worst, but instead, she felt Inko's hands gently clutching her cheeks. They looked into each other's eyes, one filled with sadness and the other with care and understanding. Mitsuki had called Inko to meet her at a bar down the street, knowing she was the only person she could confide in. Inko arrived quickly, and they found themselves in the back of her car. Inko reassured her that she would never hate her, expressing how much she cared and admired Mitsuki for standing up to her husband. She reminded her that despite Izuku's struggles, he needed her, and so did she. Mitsuki's eyes watered, but no tears fell as she remembered the months spent helping Inko and little Izuku, feeling closer than ever to her friend. In that moment, Mitsuki leaned closer to Inko, and without warning, they shared a kiss. Their lips met, and the warmth of the moment enveloped them. They pulled away slightly, breathless, gazing into each other's eyes, and then they continued to share tender kisses, savoring the connection they had forged. Izuku noticed a notebook left behind on a table in the coffee shop. Curious, he picked it up and opened it, hoping to find contact information for the owner. Instead, he discovered a note inside that read, "The world runs on rules. Schools and companies have their handbooks. Neighborhoods have their homeowners associations. Even countries have their laws. You spend all day following rules. Wouldn't it be nice if you could be the one writing the rules for once? Now you can. This is the rulebook. Simply put the name of an organization and write your rules. Any rule you can think of will be followed by everyone in that organization. You can write old rules and new rules. People will treat old rules casually like they've been around forever. The world will even change to accommodate old rules as you write them. On the other hand, new rules only go into effect once you've written them down. People will still follow them, but they may express nervousness, embarrassment, excitement, or other emotions about them. Oh, and one last tip. Make sure you use a pencil. Wouldn't want you regretting your changes. Izuku smirked, skeptical but intrigued. A pencil lay next to the notebook, so he decided to give it a try. He opened the book to the first page and wrote the name of the coffee shop at the top. His gaze drifted to the cute red-headed barista behind the counter, and he wrote his first rule. Old rule. The dress code requires female employees to wear a specific uniform. To his astonishment, the barista's attire shifted to match the new rule, leaving her in a uniform that was stylish yet modest. She continued to serve customers, seemingly unaffected by the change. Izuku quickly erased the rule, restoring her original outfit. His mind raced with possibilities as he glanced back at the barista. Just then, a petite blonde waitress tapped his shoulder, looking unimpressed. She informed him that if he wasn't going to order, he would need to leave. Flustered, he apologized and promised to order soon. The waitress sighed and moved on to assist another customer. Izuku felt shy around girls, especially since he was often surrounded by them at school and home. His thoughts wandered to Achiko, the girl he had feelings for. He remembered their sweet moments together, but those memories were overshadowed by the pain of betrayal when he caught her with his former friend. That hurt was still fresh in his mind. Sighing, he turned his attention back to the notebook, pencil in hand. He wrote a new rule. New rule: nobody will notice this book or the owner writing in it. This book cannot be destroyed or lost, as it appears and disappears whenever and wherever the owner wishes it to. He carefully reread his words, feeling a surge of confidence. Just then he overheard the barista complaining about a lack of milk. As she went to the back, Izuku focused on the book. In an instant, it vanished from his hands, only to reappear moments later, igniting a mischievous grin on his face. He began to write again. Old rule: if a cafe is out of milk, they will ask patrons for alternatives. If a patron declines, they will ask someone else. His heart raced with excitement as he considered the implications of his new power. If the patron agrees, they will either prepare themselves and provide a sample for the food or drink, or use a protective method to collect it for the patron or employee's use. The employee will assist if asked, but it will be limited to a specific amount. If milk is required, they will express it into a cup for use. The person providing can request to go somewhere private or do it in public, as not many witnesses would be surprised, having seen it several times already. The heartbeat quickened in the stomach, and a bead of sweat rolled down the forehead while waiting for the rule to set in. Moments later, the barista, looking somewhat defeated, emerged from the back. She glanced around from behind the counter before her golden eyes locked onto the patron. A clear plastic cup was visible in her hand as she approached. The tension increased as she got closer, finally placing the cup on the table and looking directly at the patron. She stated that they were out of milk and asked if she could have some. She spoke as if this was a normal request, and it took a moment for the patron to gather their composure. They nodded and asked if she would like it here or in the back. She adjusted her stance, ready to respond. A stray lock of black hair rested on her nose as she gestured for him to sit at the edge of the fluffy cafe seat, his legs out in the open. He quickly thought of another rule and began to scrawl it down. The new rule stated that the owner of the book had certain impressive attributes and could indulge in various activities as he pleased, with the assurance that any ailments were taken care of. As he finished writing, the lady playfully tugged at his shorts, drawing attention to the noticeable bulge in his boxers. It was a surprising sight, and she took a moment to compose herself, clearly taken aback by the unexpected reveal. Izuku felt a rush of heat to his cheeks as he sensed the eyes of those around him, some guys looking on with envy while the girls gazed with interest, a few biting their lips in anticipation. A cool hand wrapped around him, causing a jolt of surprise and a quick intake of breath. She began to move her hand in a teasing manner, encouraging him to share when he was nearing his limit. Izuku would have fainted if Mina hadn't helped to calm him down, her comforting hands rubbing circles into his chest as she sat sideways in his lap, her head resting against him. He noticed the pleading look on Mitsuki's face and decided to relent. He expressed that after everything he had endured, he felt no sympathy for the person in question, but he asked Mitsuki to treat his mother well and give her the world. Mitsuki appeared ready to burst with frustration over her husband's wrongdoings, but she ultimately leaned in to kiss 𝐒𝐮𝐽, their affection evident as they embraced passionately. Mina, pleased with Izuku's acceptance, leaned in to give him a quick kiss, which quickly deepened as they became lost in the moment. Both pairs of lovers found themselves on the spacious couch, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Izuku struggled to maintain control, feeling overwhelmed by the intensity of the situation. Suddenly, a few knocks echoed on the door, breaking the spell of their heated moment. The sound jolted them back to reality, and they all took a moment to catch their breath, exchanging knowing glances that conveyed the weight of their shared secret. They understood that this was a moment they would carry with them, a family secret that would only grow more complex as their relationships evolved. Mitsuki and 𝐒𝐮𝐽 were in a delicate situation, with 𝐒𝐮𝐽's robe discarded and Mitsuki's hand discreetly exploring. Izuku felt a mix of emotions as he observed the scene, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment. He quickly averted his gaze, realizing the gravity of the moment. Another series of knocks interrupted them, prompting 𝐒𝐮𝐽 to hastily dress, her cheeks flushed as she made her way to the door, eliciting a playful reaction from Mitsuki. This story follows a lonely, somewhat depressed young boy who discovers a book that can alter reality to his will. With each written command, his desires begin to manifest, and the world around him shifts to accommodate his whims, all while remaining unnoticed by those around him. This narrative explores themes of power and consequence, reminding readers of the importance of responsibility in the face of temptation. To be continued. The green-haired mother looped the belt around her waist, securing it to ensure her nightwear remained in place. Izuku found himself captivated by the small wet spot on Mitsuki's jeans, pondering whether all women experienced such things or if it was just some girls. Her legs were spread wide, one leg dangling off the couch. Izuku took in every detail of Mitsuki's figure, and it wasn't until he finished his silent observation that he noticed her gaze fixed directly on him, her red eyes locking onto his. With a playful wink and a teasing smile, she made his heart race, leaving him blushing and looking away. The cute alien girl beside him chuckled softly, reminding him that he was perfect and that he should never forget those who cared for him. Just then, Momo climbed onto the couch next to them, prompting Izuku to glance over in time to see Mitsuki leading 𝐒𝐮𝐽 to the bedroom, hand in hand. His mother winked at him before disappearing into her room. Momo playfully kissed Izuku, and in a moment of excitement, she also shared a kiss with Mina, leading to a lively atmosphere on the couch. Izuku felt a tear form in his eye as he looked at Momo, overwhelmed with emotion, while both Mina and Izuku found themselves shedding tears of joy. Momo insisted she was fine, her hands flailing defensively. After a long session of tears and heartfelt moments, Izuku decided to prepare breakfast as it was now 7 a.m. The bacon sizzled in the pan, and the heat from the grease barely registered as he flipped pancakes and bacon simultaneously. The three of them ate in silence, the only sounds being the occasional crunch of bacon and muffled noises from his mother's room. Momo blushed and suggested that their mothers could be a bit quieter, while Mina chuckled, nearly spitting out her food in amusement. Momo frowned at Mina, reminding her not to speak with her mouth full. Mina pouted, her cheeks puffed up like a chipmunk, which made Izuku laugh until he realized a piece of pancake was lodged in his nose. He quietly excused himself from the table, the two ladies laughing at his misfortune. The classroom was eerily silent, as if frozen in time. Izuku felt the weight of stares on him, remembering the chilling whispers of murderer and killer that followed him. He had acted in a moment of desperation, ripping out the spine of a monster that had once been human. The familiar sensation of being judged sent shivers down his spine, reminiscent of his middle school days. Most students avoided him, except for May, who remained unfazed and invited him to visit her shop later. The teachers expressed their gratitude for saving the students' lives, assuring everyone that they would come to understand the situation. Momo and Mina watched as Izuku's mood sank further. He sighed, feeling the weight of their gazes, but he knew he had to stand up for himself. Thankfully, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was absent, otherwise he would have felt even more intimidated. Izuku took a deep breath and addressed the class, apologizing for his actions but explaining that the situation had spiraled out of control. He had to act quickly to prevent further harm, knowing the pain of losing a classmate would be unbearable. He bowed deeply, expressing his remorse. A heavy silence enveloped the room until Kirishima broke it, praising Izuku's bravery and insisting there was no need for an apology. He reminded everyone that Izuku had saved their lives, and they were all in his debt. Izuku looked up, offering a weak smile that warmed the hearts of his classmates. The note conveyed everything, but it still lacked actual proof. The only solid evidence they had was the videotapes showing 𝐒𝐮𝐬's group dragging a struggling Izuku into the bathroom and bullying him in the hallways, alongside many others. It was unacceptable and it made her stomach turn. Nizu acted swiftly, dismissing nearly 90% of the school staff. Pitohui took another sip of her beer, enjoying the sweet, bubbly sensation as it went down. She recalled a time when she refrained from drinking, when she was seen as the good girl. Yet, inside she was a rebellious spirit. After her military discharge, she battled with substance use and went through rehab. Now beer was her choice, though she typically kept it moderate. But tonight, with so much on her mind, she found herself indulging. She called for another beer, but the bartender informed her there was a limit, suggesting she either leave or order food. Pitohui giggled, playfully observing the bartender, and tucked a stray hair behind her ear. The bartender blushed, and before Pitohui could respond, the bartender apologized, saying she didn't swing that way. Pitohui pouted, calling her cute. The world around her swayed, and the lights flickered. When she attempted to follow the bartender, she stumbled and fell, only to be caught by someone who gently patted her back. Despite her confusion and disorientation, she recognized the voice of her lifelong friend, 𝐒𝐮𝐬. Her words came out slurred as 𝐒𝐮𝐬 hoisted her onto her shoulder and carried her out the door toward their apartment just a few blocks away. Todoroki was consumed by thoughts of Izuku. His father had raised him to be the best, bred for the sole purpose of becoming the #1 hero. Yet, seeing Izuku made him feel as though all that effort was wasted. The more he learned about Izuku, the more he began to doubt himself. He was determined to defeat Izuku Midoriya, and he would do it soon. He pumped weights with fervor, sweating as if he had run a marathon. In a fit of frustration, he threw an 80 lb weight against the wall, which didn't even leave a mark. He gritted his teeth, vowing to beat him. His father stood at the bottom of the stairs, a sinister smile on his face, urging him not to disappoint. Nana observed young Izuku's skills with admiration. The green-haired boy never seemed to stray from his workouts. However, as she watched him, a frown replaced her smile. She sensed something unsettling within him, a disturbance that sent chills down her spine. She had felt it since he arrived at the school but could never pinpoint it. The day on the roof, when Izuku nearly harmed her, echoed in her mind, reminding her of all for one. She wiped the sweat from her brow with her yellow glove, continuing to watch him. Her mentor's words echoed in her thoughts. Even the most ordinary-looking people could be dangerous. She knew Izuku had a troubled past, but would that lead him down a dark path? She whispered to herself that villains weren't born, they were made. Mina was in a bubbly mood, which sometimes made her overly social. She pointed at Momo, specifically at her chest, and exclaimed about her not wearing a BR. Momo rolled her eyes, though Izuku could see her embarrassment. Momo clarified that it was a sports BR. Mina's gaze was intense as she teased Momo about needing more support. Nearby, 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who was taking a break, spat her water in shock, but it went unnoticed. Mineta chimed in with his usual antics, making comments about the girls, but Tsuyu quickly silenced him with a swift slap. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 felt a pang of insecurity, noticing that no one seemed to pay her any compliments. She held her head low, feeling invisible. Momo, frustrated, pointed out that 𝐤𝐬 was appealing and that she would rather have 𝐤𝐬's body and personality than be objectified. Momo realized her words had come out wrong and looked at 𝐤𝐬, who was blushing and smiling shyly. It was a rare sight, and Momo felt embarrassed, stuttering an apology. A silence fell between them, and 𝐤𝐬 quietly thanked her. Izuku was lost in thought, feeling a wave of melancholy wash over him as he walked through the colorless hallways. Suddenly, Ochako's bright smile caught his attention. Her skirt swayed as she approached, and Izuku felt his cheeks flush when she got too close, the scent of her perfume enveloping him. Stammering, he struggled to form words, and when he finally managed to say something, Ochako turned red and dashed away, leaving him blinking in surprise. Pitohui, observing from a distance, smirked at Izuku, teasing him about his interaction. She beckoned him to follow her, and he knew better than to question her. She was indeed a peculiar woman. The green-headed teen followed closely behind the veteran girl, their shoes clicking on the marble floor, echoing through the desolate hallways of U. Recently, there had been a noticeable lull in campus activity, a mystery that the green bean had yet to unravel. The great symbol of power, strength, knowledge, and heroism, was that truly the case? His mind grappled with the thought that without heroes, the world as he knew it would likely be in ruins. The strongest would survive, while the weak would be discarded. Yet, even now, the world may not be ablaze, but it remained a place where the strong thrived, where they became heroes and followed a clear path in life, receiving everything on a silver platter. The weak, whether quirkless or quirked, were often treated poorly. A few heroes made efforts to save anyone and anything, but the majority, in a crisis, they were more inclined to rescue the parents rather than that one quirkless child. They overlooked the signs of struggle, the scars, and the pain, dismissing the child's cries as lies or attention-seeking, making their situation even worse. Izuku understood this from personal experience. His thoughts were interrupted by Pitohui, who paused at her office door and gestured for him to enter. She settled onto the couch, waiting for him to sit. He did so, noticing the distant look in her eyes. She asked how he was doing, and he twitched at the faint scent of beer that stung his nostrils. He forced a bright smile and replied that he was doing well, but her next words caused his smile to falter and his eyes to widen. She called him out on his lie, and he struggled to maintain his composure, knowing he was not good at deceiving others. Pitohui's frown deepened, sending a shiver down Izuku's spine. She sighed, realizing he would not easily open up. She wished for a deeper connection with her patient, as it would make things much simpler. Izuku fidgeted with his fingers, finally admitting that ever since the USJ incident, people had started viewing him as a monster, a freak. Though her frown returned, she felt a glimmer of hope inside, as he had finally spoken about his feelings, indicating progress. Even without her quirk, she sensed the deep-seated pain he carried within, the internal battle he faced. She asked if the bullying occurred at U, and he nodded. It was ironic that future heroes would bully someone who had acted to protect his classmates. She was unaware of just how wrong her assumptions were. She pressed him to share who was bullying him, but his eyes widened in alarm, and he shook his head. He insisted that it was fine, that he was used to it, and he didn't want anyone to get into trouble because of him. He believed it was his fault for what had happened with the Nomu. Pitohui reassured him that it was not his fault at all, emphasizing that he had saved his entire class and that they were surely grateful for his bravery.